Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the To The Point podcast. As always, I'm your host, Noah Warren, and tonight we have a special guest. It is QMJHL Scout, Moncton High School teacher, and just overall good guy, Craig Eagles. Craig, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
It's my pleasure, Noah, and thanks for the intro. Good guy. That goes a long way. So thank you for that, and it's great to connect, and it's great to chat hockey, and I'm really looking forward to it, and continued success on your front. No, you're very passionate at what you do, and it shows with the podcast. So I'm really excited to be a part of this tonight.
Well, I appreciate that, Craig. And just to tell you guys a little bit more about him, he's worked for Rogers since 2009, broadcasting hockey. He's also been a color analyst for the Q for the past 6 seasons. So, Craig, I love color analysts. Play-by-play guys, obviously, I think have the tougher job. Maybe you disagree with me on that, but what is it about color, like the great color analysts? Like I think of Ray Ferraro. I'm a big Pierre Maguire fan. A lot of people don't like him, but what's the key to being a good color analyst?
Well, Noah, let's backtrack. I'll ask you a question before I get into that great question. What makes a great play-by-play guy, in your opinion?
To me, a great play-by-play guy is including the color analyst in his play-by-play. So what I mean by that is you might see a great pass or something happen in the middle of a play without a long, like say there has been a long period without a whistle. Like you'll see Gord Miller throw to Ray and they have this kind of witty banter with each other. And it's like us having a conversation right now. It doesn't feel like it's a forced, throw.
Right. And that's what it's all about, Noah. It really is. So in my opinion, I think the play-by-play guy has the tougher of the job with pronunciation and just the speed of the game and the pace. I learned more. It was 2016 Hockey Canada Gala. I was invited down by Sheldon Kennedy, Roland Vidal, and Wayne McNeil of the Respect Group. So there I am. I drive down to Halifax, and I'm sitting. It's the first time I met Roland. Maud Boudreau was there, working for a Respect Group. And anyway, we're just kind of like, having some cocktails and stuff. And Serge Savard's sitting there, and Yvonne Cornway, and the World Championship team were getting their rings, Noah. So all the World Championship, Corey Perry, all the guys are walking by, and Roland looks down at me and he says, "Craig, you're in hockey heaven right now." I said, "Holy jumpins!" So it was great to connect with Sheldon Kennedy. And you're saying, "Well, where's this going?" Well, John Shannon was there. So we're sitting near the front of the stage. Gord Miller was there as well. I had interviewed Gord for the Maritime NHLers for Kids that summer. So I went and talked to Gord a little bit. And Lanny McDonald comes over. And anyway, it's one of those nights that you'll never forget. And Sheldon's sitting, our table was near the front. So all of a sudden, Shannon comes over. Like just right out of the blue, Shannon comes over. Well, I go up and shake his hand right away. I'm like, "Craig Eagles from Moncton." And we started talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I just did." It was there was a deal made. I forget the deal, but he had went outside to break the deal. He did a spot outside. Okay, at Pier 21 in Halifax.
Right.
Did a spot for Sportsnet right there. I learned more about color analysts and how to analyze a game in a 5-minute conversation than I did in a long time. And you know why? He said this. I said, "Well, my play-by-play guy that I usually call games with loves stats." And he Jerry Green wants me to be a stats guy and be stats driven. And Shannon said, well, are you a color guy or are you a color analyst? I'm like, well, he's like, well, I'm a color analyst. I'm, he said, no, are you beside the play-by-play guy? And I'm like, well, yeah. Well, then you're an analyst. I said, well, I do both. I run downstairs during the intermissions and oh, he said, tell stories. That's your job as a color analyst. I'll never forget that, Noah. Like, how deep is that?
Yeah.
Like, and that's what it's all about. As an analyst, I'm there to tell stories and describe the game. And it's a hard thing to do because you don't want to be too technical, but right? So you're trying to hit all those and listen, I'm no be all end all of color analysts, but it's so much fun to sit there. And I caught myself from time to time watching the game and then listening to the play-by-play guy, and it's just like, wow, it's a dream come true, to be calling games and to have the opportunity to call games. It really is.
So in that front, in the Maritime division, just narrowing it down, what's the best rank to call a game or to do color for a game? What's the best rank?
Well, I've only had 3. I don't travel with the Wildcats or anything like that. And people don't understand, oh, well, you must be a Wildcats fan. Well, first and foremost, I'm a hockey fan. And sure, when I'm calling games in Moncton, I'm trying to showcase the organization, showcase the brand, but I'm showcasing the game. When I'm calling games in St. John back in 2017, I called a lot of games during their great season and President's Cup run. I'm showcasing the Sea Dogs. I'm showcasing the opposition, and I'm showcasing the game. I've had the opportunity to call a game in Bathurst as well. So I would say, obviously, the Avenir Center, the old Moncton Coliseum, you can't beat that.
Really?
Yeah. I loved it. I didn't love the early games in September or the playoff games because I felt like Mayor Quimby. You feel like Mayor Quimby. Remember the episode, Noah, where he's sick and it's the anyway. I don't know if you're a Simpsons guy and there's sweat just dripping on. Anyway, I felt like Mayor Quimby. I really did.
Yeah.
Like it was bad. It was hot. Like I remember Memorial Cup in 06. That place was stifling hot.
Yeah, I agree. It's a warm rink. I know from most fans, it's like the dreaded Coliseum run because the only thing that people say is really good about it was the parking.
It had so much character, and I grew up. I get emotional talking about it, but I grew up in that building. Right. So many hockey memories. 1982, I was 5. We had gone to that whole season. I grew up an American Hockey League fan. I used to go to practice. My grandmother would take my brother and I to practice, and we'd be watching practice and looking for pucks. And we had a bag of old NB Hawks pucks that we collect and then take them home and play out in the frozen farmers field in the back. So many memories of the Moncton Coliseum. And then to finally kind of have the opportunity to call a game there, it was surreal. Like, I know people saying, oh, Craig, you're blowing it out of proportion, but no, that's my experience,
Right.
and that's one experience that no one can take away. So it's a really, really special thing to be able to call hockey and to have that opportunity to do that. It really
I hear you. Like in Bucktouche, I'm sure you've been to the J.K. Irving Arena, and it's
beautiful spot. Beautiful
rink.
spot. Yeah.
But the Forum I grew up playing in, and it had so much character. And I remember winning a tournament there, and like you said, it's just the little memories that you'll never forget. So you appreciate the new cool thing, the modern arena. But I see what you're saying about the Coliseum. I mean, I watched my cousin Sawyer play for the Mooseheads so many times there. and just the crazy fans yell at him and say, "Hannah, you suck," and I'll never forget those little moments either.
Well, and that's what it's all about. And that's why hockey is so unique, Noah, because whether you're the fan, the off ice official, the on ice official, the goal judge, the coach, hockey connects and has the ability to connect us all. And in a moment of time, it's a special, special sport. And really, I know I'm generalizing here. All sports are like this, but hockey, something very, very unique about the game. And that's what makes it so special. It really does.
So you mentioned earlier how, people assume you're either a Wildcat fan because you call the game Sea Dogs. You're also a scout. So how does it apply for you as a scout? You're working for the Q as a scout, but how do you approach the job? Do you just look at players, with the last name, or do you have an attachment in a sense to certain players, or how do you navigate those kind of tricky waters?
Well, that's a great question, Noah. It is hard. It's very difficult. And that's why I saw someone tweet this out, and I think it might have been Shannon. It really, I think it was John Shannon.
How did Sportsnet fire him, by the way?
Well, that's another story.
Yeah.
How do you let Doug McLean go? How do you let
Kipper?
I'm not the biggest Kipper fan.
Mm-hmm. I
But
just liked them on Hockey Central at noon. They were great
well,
TV.
they were great. They were great,
Yeah.
and Darren Millard too.
Mm-hmm.
Before we were talking about play-by-play and analysts and that type of thing, chemistry is so unique.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about chemistry here in a minute with Aaron Kennedy, because he's just a monster when it comes to calling games. And I'll tell you a quick story about that. But I'm so glad you mentioned that in that question and asked that question, because it has everything to do with integrity and credibility. So when I'm in front of the camera and the lights are on and all this stuff, sure, I'm describing the game and I'm showcasing, but like Shannon said, he's cheering for people.
Right.
And to watch Connor Garland and to watch Jacob Pelche and to watch Jarrett McIsaac and Nico Hischier, like, you're drawn into describing the game. And it doesn't matter if the opposition scores, you still have to describe, right, the 4 or 5 plays before that led to the goal. Then you have to describe the goal itself. And that's what makes it special. From a scouting perspective, I think being a color analyst first has made me a better scout, by watching the game and seeing, okay, what it takes. Matthew Joseph and Thomas Chabot in 2017 were like benchmarks for me from a scouting perspective and a color analyst perspective. Okay, well, that's what a future NHLer looks like. And Jakub Zboril, being a Bruins fan, obviously Zboril was good at times too. But to see Joseph and Chabot, really, those two players are still benchmarks for me. And, for scouting 15-year-olds and projecting them to be 19, those are players, okay, well, no one's going to be Thomas Chabot. No one's going to be Matthew Joseph. They are their own players. But where does this 15-year-old rank? Where does this guy rank? How well does he skate right now? I didn't see Chabot at 15. I didn't see Joseph at 15, but I sure saw them at 18, 19. So where is this guy going? So that's kind of where I try to project players. And that's the beauty of having the opportunity and the privilege and the honor to be associated with the game. And I'll never, like, that stuff I'll never forget, to have the opportunity to call a game and to have the opportunity to go watch players play the game they love is special. No, it really is.
So this is just what's the first thing you look for when you're scouting a player? And if you think if you see a player and you're like, okay, he's a good player, what's the first thing that kind of jumps off the page?
Wow. Another solid, amazing question, Noah. First things first, like, can he skate? We've seen where the game is trending.
Yeah.
Can he skate and can he think the game? And when I say can she skate and think the game? Because there's so many opportunities for young women out there right now, Noah. Like, you know all about those opportunities. The game will definitely take you where you want to go. And I think stories like Carly Jackson from Amherst playing for the Buffalo Buttes this season. People need to understand that women's hockey is going places too. So when I say, can she skate? Can she think the game as well? And there's so many great examples, and a lot of people don't realize that so many Division I schools on the women's side have Maritimers and Atlantic Canadians playing high-level hockey. So it's great to see. So I wanted to say that. So those two aspects are really, really important. And can they think the game at that speed? And a lot of players, that's where they're kind of they're on the border, so to speak. I'm an old school guy. I like complete players. I like two-way players. And we've chatted before, Noah, about the defensive defenseman.
Yeah.
Like, everyone wants to be that offensive guy. Like, don't be something that you're not. Like, play to your identity. And I think that's really, really important for young up and coming players to realize that just play to your identity. Don't try to do way too much. Make the first pass, jump into the play when warranted, and you'll get noticed. You really will. You'll get noticed for the right things, not the wrong.
Right. So would you say that it's on a scout to notice? Because in just watching the game, even from minor levels, it seems like coaching is just getting progressively worse because they're hurting the defensemen. They're not giving them, the opportunity that me and you, like you said, we discussed that they should be given. I mean, they play such an important role.
Well, I think the defensive defenseman or the energy player, the bottom six forward, no, we can go all the way down the bench, really. I'll never forget one national team player. All right, national team player. I'm not going to say sports or names. I'm not going to go there.
Mm-hmm.
But one national team player told me, and told a friend of, like a very, very good friend of mine, and that friend relayed this message. They said as they continued to climb the ladder in the sport, that coaching and the level of coaching got progressively worse. And that's hard to believe.
Yeah.
And let's hope that's not the case in the game of hockey. Let's hope.
That's all we can do.
That's all we can do. Because that shouldn't be the case. And I've harped on player development time and time again. As a coach in minor hockey, your job is to develop players for the next. Your job is to get them ready for the next level. It's not about W's. It really isn't. And the W's will take care of themselves. No, really, if you're working on player development and that's your main goal, to get kids ready for the next level, the wins are going to take care of themselves. And I'll tell you, you learn more from losing early in that development stage than you do from winning.
100%.
And it's really, really unfortunate to see. And, that's where the whole observations from the rink kind of came in to play in 2017, 2018, for me personally, was I was seeing tendencies from all aspects of the game, from player tendencies and coaching tendencies. And, you know, all the technology in the world now, iPads and stuff like that, but young players aren't getting the feedback when they go back to the bench because, you know, some coaches have the philosophy of, you know, they coach in practice. They don't provide feedback. So they go back and study the tape with the players. To each their own, Noah, really, to each their own. I was brought up, you know, under Dale Turner. God rest his soul. He's been gone 6 years, as a coach and a mentor and colleague and friend. Dale gave us instant feedback. As soon as we stepped off the ice, he gave us feedback. And that feedback was invaluable. So just little things like, don't bang your stick. Don't act this way. When you get back to the bench, you learn. Watch players. Watch for their tendencies. Where are they going? Why are they going this way? If player A beats you one-on-one, okay, watch what he does the next shift, right? And that's where you learn. So I've tried to implement those in my scouting and in every facet of the game that I'm involved in. So, you know, those are little things that you kind of take with you when you go and scout the games.
So you're with younger kids too, like just watching younger generations kind of coming up. So how do you think the coaching is on that level? Like say major midget, like the Moncton Flyers have this reputation of being a great organization because they do win a lot and they do produce a lot of QMJHL draft picks. But do you think they're doing a good job at producing talent, like real talent, like to their abilities, or just promoting, you know, the real top end players to win?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. I think you have to generalize. You have to look at the U18 level across the board. What type of players are they producing across the board? So here in the Maritimes and Atlantic Canada, I've written a lot about player development, and my experience going to the Gatorade Challenge in Blainville, and it kind of went back to the Chowder Cup on the girls' side. You know, we had a great Chowder Cup team, a really strong Chowder Cup team. 2008, that's a long time ago, Noah. But we had some of the best players in Atlantic Canada. And we go down to Boston, and I have the privilege to be on the bench. And game one, we win by, you know, it was a close game, you know, 1-goal game. And I was just blown away by the talent south of the border, right? It was a completely different game. Game two, we played a team out of Detroit. You might be familiar, Little Caesars.
Yeah.
Well, they just ran all over us.
Yeah.
The goaltenders, I forget the final score, but it wasn't pretty. The goaltenders had never faced shots like that. So that's how far above they were. So as a coach and a fan of the game, and you're thinking, what are we doing wrong? Why are these kids at the same age so far advanced? What could we be doing better? And that's the same feeling that I got when I flew into Blainville, walked into their rink, and really didn't understand what type of hockey I was going to see and who was going to be in the stands and on the ice playing. And that first year was Alexis Lafreniere and Samuel Poulin. So they were a step above. And those, both the Quebec-based teams were just phenomenal. Like they were robots, Noah. And They were deep. It was just incredible hockey to watch. And when they played against each other, like it felt like I was watching a Q game. And really that's what it boiled down to. These kids at 15 were already ready. They were ready.
Right.
Lafreniere, well, we all know what he did. And Poulin, we all know what he did as well. Pelche, it was during the TELUS Cup, so Pelche was away. Pelche would have been on that Quebec team as well. So, and we had some good Maritime and Newfoundland talent that first year. Alex Newhook and all those, like that's a strong draft year. But the Quebec-based kids were so far above. And so that's getting back to your question. I think we can't zero in on particular teams. We have to zero in on Atlantic Canadians
Right.
across the board. Sure, you can look at certain programs and those philosophies, but you have to look at across the board. I'm being told, and I was told when I first got into the scouting game, that Atlantic Canadian-based kids are about a half a year behind. So when I hear those things, I take that to heart. And is it really my job as a scout to try to get kids more prepared? No, and that's not the case. But I do want to see those kids in Atlantic Canada catch up. So how are they going to catch up, you ask? Well, with great programs like Pro Evolution Hockey, Derek Cormier, Rick Legier, you go to every province across Atlantic Canada, Noah, and you're going to see some great programs. And, you know, Andrews Hockey, Charlie Bourgeois, all those programs are trying to get kids caught up, trying to get kids to the next level. And you have to admire that. You really, really do.
Absolutely. And just working off that, I'd like to get your take on this because this is something when growing up playing hockey, I found when you won the game, you didn't hear any feedback because coaches felt like you didn't have to hear it because you won the game, right? And then if you lost, well, the next practice would be tougher or what have you. And I think it's the wrong message to send. And I don't think it just happened for me. I think that was common and might still be common today. But what do you think about that?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Noah. I think it happens, and I think that's why kids are falling behind. And I hate to say it, but it pisses me off. That pisses me off. That bothers me. Mm-hmm. We beat a team. This goes way back. Pee Wee AAA. We beat a team 7-2. 7-2. We came on hard in the third and played the way we were supposed to. Well, we practiced the next day. And Dale came into the dressing room after playing 2 really shitty periods. 40 minutes of crap. Mm-hmm. He gave it to us a little bit. Third period we played. I don't know how many goals we scored. We might have been even down in the game after 40. So, most coaches would say, oh, well, good effort, guys, in the third. Not Dale. We knew what we were getting the next day.
Hell.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Dale had an amazing way of sending the message, but also projecting that message to when it really counts. This is why we're doing this now. And it made us go harder in the moment so we would be better after the fact. It really did. And that's a sign of great coaches. Really.
Right. I remember Matt Sundin telling this story about Pat Quinn, who's a legendary coach who's known for being laid back, the funny, just tough Irishman, but generally a good guy. But if they won 4 or 5 in a row, he would beg his players. If they lost 2 or 3 in a row, he wouldn't. He'd give them an easy practice because in his mind, they knew like you're 1-4 or 5 in a row. You guys are going to get complacent. So I'm going to bag you now. So you're ready, down the line when like you said, when it really matters.
Well, and Bowman did that with during the heyday of the Habs, and
Mm-hmm.
we all have allegiances in the game, and you can all hate on the Habs if you want. It is what it is. You have to respect the organization for what that is, and all the organizations. But Scotty Bowman did that almost to a T, and Larry Robinson and all those,
Pat
you know,
Burns.
Pat Burns, same thing. So all those veteran coaches, they had the pulse of their team, and I don't know if coaches nowadays are, at the lower levels, are really worried about having the pulse.
Right.
I don't know. When I was coaching back in the day, I tried to have the pulse, and I tried to have the pulse of, it's hard because it takes you away from what you really want to accomplish, right? Like, oh, well, that kid's going through a breakup right now,
Mm-hmm.
or that kid's struggling at school, that kid's parents are going through a rough time. Like, that's having a pulse. It's not about, oh, wow, we won 5-2 going away. I'm going to bag skate them next practice, or I'm going to take it easy, or I'm just going to pitch a puck out and let them go. That's having a pulse, and knowing your players and knowing the team in general. And really, hopefully, coaches are taking some pride in that. But I don't think, I really don't. And I alluded to this in one of my little video observations from the rink about practice, and I deleted it. It never it never saw the light of day because it might have hit too close to home. I was scouting a midget game, and I went across the Superior Propane Center, and I watched a Bantam game, or a Bantam practice, sorry. So just between periods,
Mm-hmm.
go and get warmed up because I'm freezing my ass off. And I look out. There's 3 coaches on the ice, 2 of which are leaning against the boards. One's on the other side of the rink. And the team is doing regroups with little to no resistance. And coach is blowing the whistle. As soon as they blow the whistle, they go back in and they attack 3-on-2. It's a good drill. Bad passes, not accelerating into passing lanes, no jump, no urgency. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And this is the next crop of young, aspiring players, right? They're going to be drafted in 2 years.
Right.
You practice like you play. So that goes back to coaches having the pulse of their team and their players. Oh, well, we'll just take it easy. They've had a rough stretch. No, they're going to see rough stretches throughout their career. Oh, well, let's take it easy on them. No.
Mm-hmm.
No. Every practice matters. Every practice matters. And if you don't believe me, go ask a kid that's playing in the Q right now. Go ask a player, a person that's playing pro hockey. Every practice matters. You just can't flip the switch and say, oh, well, yeah. And coaches can't flip the switch, right?
No, you either care or you don't.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that, because it's true. It's true across all avenues of the game.
Yeah, and sometimes, Craig, I think it's parents get so involved in the hockey process that they're too involved. And maybe they don't have, you're saying, the pulse of the game. Maybe they don't have a pulse on their kid, that their kid really doesn't want to be doing hockey this much, or maybe he just wants to play, and he doesn't want to go above and beyond. But the hockey dad is so crazy that he's forcing his kid to do something he doesn't want to do.
Can you imagine being a kid nowadays on the drive home?
Ooh.
Can you imagine? with all the technology, all social media, can you imagine what it would be like? Like, I had the best hockey parents in the world, Noah. They didn't say very much. My dad, the quiet drives home were eerily quiet. And I was wanting feedback.
Right.
Right. I was, give me the feedback. Dad didn't play high level. Like, they didn't have a whole bunch of money to play at the time, organized sports. My grandfather, who passed away the year that I was born, I never met him. Worked on as an engineer on the railroad. He had arthritis. He had to, force retirement. My grandmother, grade 8 education, grew up on a farm, had to go to Petitcodiac to work, like at grade 8, grade 9 to help the family farm and to make money. Like, they didn't have money to put my dad or my aunt in organized sports. Like, that just didn't happen. But that didn't take away from my dad knowing about the game, right? And knowing what a good effort was. All my dad would say is, hit the road. Craig, you need to hit the road. He didn't think I was in good enough shape. He was right. Here I am, I'm 13, 14, all the way up through to high school, the high school ranks, hit the road, get in better shape. I was logging 30 minutes a game in high school, and it was like, hit the road, do more. Well, I'm in the best shape of my life, Dad. No, you're not. No, you're not. Right? So those are the types of drives home that I had. And that was rare. Those drives were rare. And as a coach, you saw those parents. And I'll never forget, the look on the player's face, the dejection that was on a player's face when they knew they had a bad game. And you try to lift them up as a coach. Hey, you give them a pat on the hockey, in their hockey bag, and they're carrying their sticks, and it's peewee. So their hockey bag is weighing them down. They're walking out like this.
Yeah.
And you give them a shot in the bag, on the shoulder and the hockey bag, and damn near pushes them over. Hey, we'll get, I thought you played well. We'll get them next time. But you could just see it on their face that they're going to get it in the car.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so wrong. So wrong. Like, now more than ever, we need to be lifting kids up. We don't need to put kids down. There's enough going on in the world right now, in the world of sports and behind the scenes in the dressing room and all that shit. You know what? We need to be lifting people up. And I think it'll pay dividends in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine being a pro player and having like a bad game 7. Like, I think of Jake Gardner, that game against the Bruins, and don't get me wrong, he played terrible, but he had like death threats after it's really sickening that he has to deal with that. Or Maxime Comtois at the World Juniors, where he missed that penalty shot. I'm sure you recall it.
Yeah.
And then he was an 19-year-old kid, and they're telling him to go commit suicide, and like it that takes the fun out of it. It almost makes you not want to play, because you got to deal with that bullshit every time you hit the ice.
Well, and players nowadays, everyone's kind of expected to have, Twitter account and interact with their fans and all this stuff. It's great to see some young players not have social media. And I think Lafreniere did a great job steering clear of all that. Sure, he had Instagram and he posted a few things, but once he got drafted, okay, now's the time. I'm ready. Let's do some social media stuff now. But let's say game 1 doesn't go well for him. Well, he's going to have, tons of people tagging him in this and tagging him in that and criticizing and all those things. The Comtois, having talked and interviewed and watched him play, like, this kid's the salt of the earth. He would do anything anything for his teammates and for people in general. The media, like, he was always there for the interview. He was always giving of his time, smile on his face. Like, he just loves the game. And to see him being treated like that in that situation, like, come on. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so moving back to scouting, I asked you, what's the first thing you look for in a player? Is there something you're at your first game watching a player? Is there something that a player can do that will completely turn you off from them?
Yes, but I can't. I can't be. I'm there.
More than one look.
Yes, and I'm there to be. I have to overlook that, and it's hard. That's hard, especially if they have a really bad attitude.
Right.
And if they're not a good teammate, I have to overlook that. And with my role with Central Scouting, I have to overlook that because I'm there to evaluate talent. And that was really difficult for me. And if I didn't have the people around me, some trusted allies and some mentors, they were mentors to me. My first year of scouting, I don't think, because it would have reflected in my reports. And like, I still remember going over and between periods and trying to pick as many brains as I could. I'm like, my goodness, I couldn't have that player on my team. Well, they just kind of looked at me. Well, why? Well, because, did you see his attitude? They just kind of smile. Yeah. And they're like, well, that's coaching, Craig. I'm like, well, what do you mean? If he's doing it in midget level, he's going to be the same. Like, it's attitude.
Yeah.
Culture. Like, you can't change coaching, Craig. And did it get better through the year? Yes. Maturity wise, yes. Right. So every time I go to the rink, I'm learning something from scouts, from the players, from coaches, and I'm trying to be as open as I can. But yes, it's very, very difficult when you see a draft eligible player taking bad penalties, not passing the puck, not being a good teammate, mouthing off to officials, trash talking, those things that I see. But with my role with Central Scouting, sure, I'm going to put that in my report. But I'm there to evaluate the player's talent and skill and project. And hopefully they learn that, we're going to get out of this kind of funk of attitude and lack of maturity. And hopefully they develop by 18 and 19 and be effective players at the next level.
So covering, you said mostly Sea Dog, Wildcat, and you said you called some games in Bathurst. Could you name a couple players that really had the poor attitude, like you said, kind of things that you didn't enjoy and completely shifted that down the line, years later, their attitude, better teammates, things of that nature?
Yeah. Ironically, I was asked a very similar question the other night, doing a presentation to the Halifax Wolverines, Bantam AAA. It's always going to be Bantam and midget for me. But about the third question in, kid says, yeah, jumps on Zoom or Teams or whatever and says, yeah, I have a question. I said, okay. I always want to know their name, right? What's your name? And yeah, I'm so-and-so. Okay, nice to meet you. What's your question? Kid says, you talked about playing to your identity and, character. Have you ever seen a player change? And I use Connor Garland as an example of that. Right, Noah? Like, he stayed on the ice for 3-minute shifts, banging stick on the power play, just little things. But we've seen him grow, and we've seen him mature, and we've seen him start as a third and fourth liner in the National Hockey League to a top 6 threat and a power play specialist and a potential 20 goal scorer.
Yeah.
So it's great to see. And a lot of people would have thought, oh, well, he's too small. He'll never play in the National Hockey League. He's going to have to change his game. He's going to have to adjust too much. He'll never survive and all this stuff. If you go back and look at his stats, and I'm not a big lover of stats, okay, analytics and all this stuff. Look at his second and third year in the league that he has been in every year. You don't believe me? Go back and look. He is chameleon-like when it comes to adjusting and adapting. And that's why he's so successful. And that's why there's going to be a big payday coming his way very, very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if he has a big year this year with Arizona.
Good, because they're going to stink.
You think?
Yeah, I do.
Really?
Yeah.
I think they've got a lot of young talent. And if Tocchet can reel them in and get them playing solid two-way hockey, I think Arizona is going to be halfway decent.
It'll help them because if the division alignment stays as is, they're going to be playing against the California teams a lot. And, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim are all pretty
rebuilds.
Tore down or old. They're basically all the same. Old and slow.
Wow. And, they're trying to inject young, right? Young and skill and all those things. So, the West is going to be pretty wild. There's no question about it. But you look at how far Connor has come as a player and as a person. It's great to see. It really is. And you want to see players
absolutely
be able to adapt and change and mature and grow. Well, all you have to do is think back. Well, what was I like when I was 18? What was I like when I was 19, 20, right? They're just kids. Like, we forget that so many times.
Absolutely.
That they're just kids. And we see them, well, why are they acting this way? Or why did he bang his stick? And why is he sulking to the official? Because they care so much, right? They care. But they give off this, aura of me, or attitude. Well, no, it's just it looks different, right? It just looks different. You mentioned the Sea Dogs. Zaboral really matured, and Paul Boudelier did a fantastic job on the back end over those 2 seasons with the Sea Dogs, and really helped Shabbat and all the back end. But Boudelier worked very, very well, a lot with Zaboral as well. And with Jakub, it was more of confidence and poise with the puck, and Jakub took some bad penalties. Oh, bad penalties. Like penalties on the power play. Undisciplined. Exactly. Those are selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Those are retaliatory penalties. Selfish. Zaboral, go back, look at the tape. Zaboral took a lot of them. He really, really did. Funny story, and I meant to say this earlier about Aaron Kennedy. My first game calling, I traveled down to St. John. First game calling a game and with Aaron, and Aaron's just like a massive pro, and Jerry Green's great and as well, and all the guys that I've worked with, Peter up in Bathurst. Like, I've learned so much from all 3 of them. I really have, because they've been calling hockey games from a play-by-play perspective for years.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Kennedy's sitting, jotting down his notes. I go up and meet him and introduce myself, and he shakes my hand, and it's much more relaxed. But You can just see the fierceness. So he starts. We don't do a stand up that night because we cut right to the game, and he goes. And I asked him before the game. I said, "When do you want me to jump in?" Because that's my biggest thing. I don't want to interrupt, right? I
Right.
never want to interrupt. And he said, "Well, after the stoppage, or once there's a stoppage, you have right till the puck drops." I'm like, okay. So first stoppage of play, I'm doing my thing, kind of breaking down the Sea Dogs, talking about, I don't know, the Eagles, that type of thing. I've said my piece. It's an icing call. Nothing's happening. Dead air. Aaron's not going. They haven't dropped the puck, Noah. When he says you have until they drop the puck,
He meant it.
He meant it. And years of experience calling American Hockey League games. And he's phenomenal to work with. And from a writing perspective, Aaron Kennedy has been a tremendous mentor for me. And I'll never forget it. And I've had some great play-by-play people to really learn from. So it's been very fortunate.
Right. And just being around them, being scouting as long as you have, who's the best player you've ever scouted?
Best player I've ever scouted. Have to be Lafreniere.
He's that good?
He's that good. He's that good. What he did at top speed, I think Poulin, I said it right from the get-go. As soon as I saw Poulin, I'm like, holy jumpins. This kid's not going to be in the league. He's going to be in the National Hockey League at 19. People are like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, he's going to be in the National Hockey League at 19. And I'm thinking, after game one, watching Lafreniere, I'm like, I think Poulin is better. So I go over. In Blainville, they just feed the scouts. Like, I'll never forget the spread that they had the first year there, and it's been the same way. One because of COVID, obviously we missed the Gatorade Challenge last year because it was canceled. Like, I love that tournament, absolutely love it, because there's you just get to pick people's brains and share and learn and grow, and great hockey conversations. We make our final list during that weekend, and so I remember walking, trying to burn off as many calories as I could, walking around the concourse in Blainville. And I stopped, and I went up to a good friend of mine who scouts for Rimouski. And as we all know, Rimouski had first overall that year. I'm like, man, Poulin is a really good player. And they're like, yeah, just watch Lafreniere. Just watch him. I'm like, well, Poulin's like, he's really good. Yeah, so game 2 rolls around. I'm, eating, doing my rounds on the concourse. Yeah, you're right. it only took 2 games to see how gifted this kid is, and he's not going to blow people away with his skill and his speed, but he just does everything really, really well.
Right.
It's his compete level, Noah, that people don't understand, that it's elite. It's elite. He has elite level skill. His vision is really, really good, but he's not going to blow people away with that. It's his compete level. And I think we saw that at the World Juniors last year.
Absolutely, yeah.
That this kid is relentless, and he'll do anything that it takes to win. He'll do anything that it'll take to win a 50-50 puck battle. And when you have your best player doing that, you better damn well believe that the rest of the team are going to take notice, and they're going to say, oh, well, if he's doing it, we're going to do it too.
And to your point, he got injured early in the tournament, and he could have easily just mailed it in the rest of it. I mean, anybody could have accepted that because he's going to go number 1 overall. It's way more important that he's healthy come June than it is for him to play for Canada. I mean, in the big scheme of his career, but he
Right.
comes back and wins player of the tournament. So it just shows his determination level just in that short time frame.
Well, yeah, and let's face it, Rimouski had the team. They were one of the top echelon teams, and it would have been. We'll always have the unknown because of COVID. Which team would have come out of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League? We'll never know, but it would have been really fun to watch.
Would have been a great playoff, yeah.
It would have been, and I think a lot of people from a Cape Breton Eagles perspective had the Eagles upsetting Moncton. And that would have been a very interesting playoff series. It really would have. And it was just set up, at that point that, they would have been meeting. And the last game at the Avenir Center, Moncton had their way with Cape Breton. And I'll never forget, usually I go down and visit the visiting team and get some, reaction from them, because Moncton's covered so well. Neil Hodge does a good job, and I want to showcase the league, league wide and players in it. I remember standing on the concourse of the Avenir Center and just kind of knowing it was eerie that night that this has the potential of being the last game. And in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, well, no, they might shut it down for a couple weeks, 3 weeks, and then come back, end the regular season and come back for playoffs. But I'm not going to go down and talk to players. I'm going to hightail it. I never leave games early. Oh, well, scouts do it all the time, Craig. Last 10 minutes of the third period, if it's a blowout, I stay there. And I make a point of staying there until the final buzzer, until the handshakes, and until the Zamboni comes on. I don't know what it is. It's just, maybe it goes back to my dad saying, no, stay here, and letting the crowds kind of filter out of the old Moncton Coliseum. Because if you're in one of those lines to try to get out of that parking lot, you'll remember it was hell.
Yeah.
But Dad just said, no, stay here. It might be that, but I've learned more about players in the final 2 or 3 minutes about a game of the game, about their character and their pushback. Late. I never leave games early, and I left with 4 minutes left in the third period that night, and Moncton I think might have shut them out 4-0, or maybe it might have been 4-1. I don't know if Cape Breton scored one late, but I think it might have been 4-0 the last game at the Avenir Center. And I remember walking back up to my car that I usually park on St. George Street and thinking, wow, this might be it. No, that's not going to happen. And sure enough, it was. So, it's awful to see so many organizations kind of go all in and not know what could have been. But I wouldn't have been against Lafreniere and the Rimouski Oceanic. I really wouldn't.
Obviously, you have a pulse with the league, so I'm wondering, they're supposed to be coming back January 3rd, right? That's after the Christmas break and everything. So for the playoffs, are they just going to have like a maritime champion, or do you have any inside scoop of what they're going to do for the playoffs come March?
No scoops here.
No
scoops here. No. I would love to see the CHL start up in February, the other two leagues. Yeah. I would love to see the Q League get going around January 13th and away they go. And I'd love to see all that happen, and the Memorial Cup being played. I just hope we can get there, right? Are they going to bubble in Quebec? I think there's talk of that. I had one source out of Quebec say that, a lot of organizations have offered up their rinks. I'm not going to name who, those organizations are. I know it's very costly. And I think, there's a sense of people realizing how costly that was to do what they did in Quebec. I think it was a tremendous success. I think the league did a fantastic job with the coverage. So many people behind the scenes at the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League that do tremendous work from a social media perspective, all in every facet of the game. I really hope that we can get the season finished and completed, and that there's a President's Cup award winner, and that team deserves it, and they go on and hopefully capture the Memorial Cup. Wouldn't it be special to see the Q kind of it's incredible if you go back and really look at what the Q has done in the last 3 to 4 years at the Memorial Cup. It really is. It's a special tournament. So hopefully we can get there. And I think that's all that we can kind of wish for, is getting the second half of the season going, hoping that, the vaccine comes in and we have access to it, and that everyone stays healthy, Noah. In the grand scheme of things, that's what matters, really. The game has to take a back seat at times. And we saw that last year when things got shut down. People don't realize how much money it actually takes to bubble and to do all those things.
Yeah, and before we start to wrap, we talked about this last night, but I think it's important to bring it up here today, just about the World Juniors. And if for anybody doesn't know, yesterday 5 players were cut from the World Junior roster because they were ineligible to play because they had COVID or were in contact. It was loose restrictions that they were saying, but me and you kind of discussed it, and we didn't like how their names were released. And I thought about it just after talking to you briefly last night and thinking it over today. I really don't like how the Sweden team, Switzerland, Germany, Canada has these young kids' names being floated of having COVID. I don't think it's really anybody's business. I think you can just put them in the cuts and say they're not coming. I just have something uneasy about it for me.
That's news, right?
Yeah.
And the World Juniors, highly coveted tournament, highly covered tournament. I didn't like that, to be honest. And it being plastered all over social media doesn't help either, right?
No.
It's really unfortunate that, anyway, we've learned so much about, and even here in New Brunswick, Noah, we've learned so much about, testing and, travel, and people that test negative on day 5, test negative on day 9, and then all of a sudden day 11, they're positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's to know the backstory of what happened? We don't know that, and we shouldn't know that. That's their business. It's really hard, and in the age that we live in with social media, like, that's a scoop that I don't think, from a journalistic standpoint, from a media standpoint, I don't think I'd ever go there. Like, if someone, like, let's say I had it on 3 sources that that a player A tested COVID positive. I'd sit on it. I wouldn't put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the player came to me and said, yeah, this is what I was dealing with, can you write a story on it? I'm like, I'd still think about it, but I probably wouldn't go. I said, I'd say, well, do you really want to go there?
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that I've learned about this whole media and the balance between media and scouting and writing and broadcasting, all those things. It's a fine line where you don't necessarily, do you scoop it or don't you? Do you want to, is it all about likes and retweets, or is it about the relationship that you've built over the years of trust? I don't know.
You create your own moral compass.
Well, from a journalistic standpoint, I think you have to.
Yeah.
And, people are probably, when they watch this, are going to say, oh, well, he's a hypocrite. He's written speculation articles. Yeah, I've written a few. I broke one trade. I'll never do it again. Never do it again.
Did you take a lot of heat for it?
Nope.
So why would you never do it again?
Well, ironically, the week before, I wrote a piece on everyone wants to be an insider and rumors and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Then it was I thought it was a meaningful news story. And I had it on like three very reliable sources gave it to me. So I went with it. I didn't regret it at the time, and I don't necessarily regret it now, but I won't do it again. Just some stories aren't mine to be told, right? And I've learned that, and it's hard. It's hard to find that balance, because I've sat on stories just because I don't want to ruin that relationship with people. I've still had the opportunity to scoop a few things, but yeah. It's just really, it's hard for me to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a player, let's say, as an example, someone gives me the trade. Well, is it better to write a speculation article that this player might get traded, or to break the news 3 days before the trade's announced?
Right.
Like, you're in some murky waters right there.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
As a journalist.
And you never know when you might get burned too, because we've seen that happen to plenty of insiders across any league you want to talk about. How they say a trade's done, and then they get the player come at them on Twitter, and they're like, "Jackass, no, I'm still here."
Right. And the Greg Gilbert story. I had it on two sources, and I wrote the speculation article, and then it was to the point where, okay, like, I got a message at midnight, and I'm like, I have to go. Like, no one else has this right now. So I had to go. And that was the longest, like 24-hour period, because what if I'm wrong?
Right.
What if something falls through? That's where you have to really trust your sources, trust yourself from a journalistic standpoint. I'll never forget when Mikel Laurent retweeted, and I'm like, okay, yeah. And when they announced it, it was like, because like that was big news in New Brunswick and across the Q, and it kind of got picked up, and it kind of blew up. It's hard. Like, I'm not going to lie. It's hard to know when to go on a story and when not to. And like I said earlier, some stories aren't mine to be told. They really aren't. I'd love to write them, but they're not mine to be told.
No, that makes total sense. And just leaning back to your intro, you're a high school teacher and a scout. Is it harder to scout teenagers or teach teenagers?
Oh, wow. I've never been asked that question. Oh boy. I think it's great because I see 15-year-olds every day. I teach grade 10. So I'm scouting kids that are the same age. And it's only happened once where I've actually scouted a student.
What was that like?
Well, I was honest and upfront with the kid, and the kid understood that. So, but yeah, we taught in personal development and career planning. That's the class that that I teach. I talk a lot about obviously careers, and I try to talk about my pathway. I wanted to be a teacher since grade 9, Noah. Like, my brother was a teacher, and he wanted to be a teacher, a phys ed teacher from around the same time. So my linear, my personal and career pathway was very linear. Now it's starting to branch off in all these different directions. It's like,
Right.
oh, no one ever told me that this could have been an option, or that might have. So it's great to see where 15-year-old brains can go and how creative they are. And I think, can I relate that into a hockey player? Yes, I can. They're just learning. They're learning more about themselves and more about the game every day. I've seen some 15-year-olds overcome tremendous adversity to get to where they are, both on the ice and in the classroom. And you have to celebrate those stories. You really do. And, like, I've and we talked a little bit about Josh Nadeau last night. Josh Nadeau was the first player that I wrote a prospect article on. And, earlier we were talking about how torn I was about scooping a story. Well, I was torn about that. I reached out to the family to make sure that it was okay if I could publish it, first of all. And then it was, okay, I already have reaction. I sat on it until he made the Canada Games team, because I had his coach with the Caps, Bissonnette, and Poddle, the assistant coach with the Canada Games team. I had their reaction. Like, I had everything ready to go. All I had to do was push publish. But I really wanted the family to know what I was writing about their kid.
Mm-hmm.
But deep down, I wanted other cue teams to realize that even at 5'4" or 5'3", 130 pounds, that this kid can flat out play the game. So I've never seen a smarter player at the midget level than Josh Nadeau. And you're saying, well, what's that got to do with the classroom? I've taught some kids that are just amazing students and that are on a trajectory that no one really knows where they're going to go. And that's how I kind of feel about 15-year-old hockey players. Some need an opportunity. Some need to be pushed. Some need to be challenged. Some just need to be praised. And from a teaching perspective, Noah, when you look at a kid, call a kid up or pull a kid aside and say, I'm proud of you. And to see some kids well up and almost start crying because it's the first time they've ever heard that, that gives you perspective of what a 15-year-old hockey player is going through.
Right.
And so it's given me a very unique perspective on both sides, for sure.
I could talk to you forever, Craig, but I'll close just asking you about this. You're a scout, teacher, like we said, but more importantly, you're a husband and you're a father. So how, in your busy life, how do you find time for every role that you have?
Oh, earlier this September, I wrote throughout the pandemic. Writing to me was very therapeutic, and it always has been. When I was 30, so that's 13 years ago, back when I had more hair, I went through a pretty significant. I had a 5-year relationship end, and I did a lot of writing at the time, and it was tremendously therapeutic for me. So I had gotten away from the whole writing thing. And a good buddy of mine, he had a blog going at the time. And my wife was pregnant with our first child. We had just gotten married in 2012. And I still wanted, coming off a provincial championship in 2011 and 2012. I still wanted to coach and kind of give back. So I was an assistant coach with a Bantam AAA girls program, the Stars. And anyway, the head coach stepped down. Well, during that season, my oldest was born. She was born 4 weeks premature. I don't know if I was ready to be a dad. At that time, I was nervous. You go through all the emotions. And looking back on that, like, I should have never been in that situation. Like, I never should have put, right, families first. And it has to be. So that's 2013 was when I started writing about the game. And my first article was an email to parents. My first blog was an email to parents. I've learned so much about myself over that time. But this September, I came to the realization, like, why am I 2 years ago, Noah, I said to myself that no one is going to outwork me, that there's no reason why I can't do all of those things and do them well. So that was my goal of, well, I can do this and I can budget my time. I really tried to be home for as many bedtimes as I could be. But I try to be the best husband, try to be the best dad I can be. But there are sacrifices that you have to make sometimes. And hopefully hopefully I haven't made, a mistake in trying to do everything the best I could. It's a strange kind of dynamic of trying to follow your passion and try to do what you love to do, but family's number one. And there would be nights where I'd be driving back and it was either raining or snowing from St. John in 2017, asking myself, why the hell am I doing this? And the what ifs, like, what if I crashed the Rogers van right now in the middle, between St. John and Moncton?
Right.
And it's just like, so many sacrifices have to be made. So when COVID hit, everyone was like, oh, well, you're going to miss hockey. You're going to do this. You're going to, it put a lot of things in perspective for me, to be honest with you. And I didn't miss the game. Everyone, going on their social media. Sure, I missed the sights and the sounds and all those things. But it was great to spend that much time and have that opportunity to spend with my family. Am I the best dad in the world? I try to be. Am I the best husband in the world? I try to be. Am I the best teacher in the world? I try to be. It's trying to find a balance with all those things. And in September, that's when I said, it's time. It's time to hit the pause button. And it was kind of a relief at the time. So I made a few phone calls that night, and one of which was to Yannick Duplessis. I just wanted to check in. I just wanted to check in on Yannick to see how he was doing. And that was the night that Yannick told me that he had been outed and that he wanted me to write a story. So it just gave me perspective and kind of time to think about things. And then to have, 16-year-old or 17-year-old kid say, I want you to write my story, was pretty profound. That
For sure.
And what a story it was, and what courage Yannick has showed, with his story. So hopefully that answered your question. And that's probably one of the best questions that I've ever been asked in all of this. But what changed for me the most, and the person that told me this will probably, hopefully he's not upset, because it's the second time I've told this story. It was a snow day about a year and a half ago. And I spoke to Dave Poulin. Dave told me that the best thing that I could probably, well, he asked me, he said, Craig, what's the end goal? What do you want to do? I said, I don't know. Like, I'd love an NHL scouting job. I'd love, a broadcasting thing, whatever that might be. I'd love to write. And then the light bulb went on. I don't have to leave Moncton to do all those things. Like, stay in the moment. Even talking with George Matthews, another great play-by-play guy, I've learned a lot from George. And I've never called a game with him, but I've learned a lot because I've picked his brain. George said the same thing. He's had people come to him saying, listen, I've called, 300 games. I when's my big break coming? Enjoy the journey.
Right.
Enjoy the moment, stay in the moment. And I think I'll never forget, that's the light bulb moment for me, is I can do all the things that I love to do, and I don't have to leave. So when I come home, I'm a husband and I'm a dad. When I'm at school, obviously I'm a husband, I'm a dad first, but I'm a teacher. And when I go to the rink, when I get there a little bit late because I tuck the kids in, I'm a scout, a writer, and a broadcaster. And there's days where daddy's going to miss bedtime, but daddy's going to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning when they wake up.
Right.
And to be there, the rest of the day. So I don't know if I'm doing a good enough job, but I'm trying, and I'm trying as hard as I can to do those things.
No, thank you for sharing that, Craig. That's quite profound to hear, and it's at least you're clearly thinking about it. So I think you're doing a lot more than some fathers out there. So I don't know. I think you're doing fine.
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking the question, Noah, because it's one of those questions that you have to think about on a daily basis. Like, I know the game means so much to everyone, but when it boils right down to it, yeah, like family is what matters. And, I said earlier, the game connects us and all this stuff, but family's number one.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And if anybody's watching the video of this on YouTube, you can see behind Craig, he's got a bunch of pictures, a lot of different Bruins memorabilia, it looks like. So I'll just ask you, who's your favorite hockey player all time?
Oh, all time, I'd have to say number 99. That's the era that I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget 1983. So 82, they won the Calder Cup, the old MB Hawks, and they leave. And then the Alpines come in, right? It's like, oh, wow. I'll never forget going and watching. I like 6 years old, right? All I remember is Gretzky staying on the ice, and he was the last person on the ice for warm-up. And the place was packed, right? But I had been there for the Calder Cup, so I heard the place. It was loud. I've heard it before. But all I remember was Gretzky being the last person on the ice, and everyone, like my dad, saying, "Watch, Craig, watch." He'd flip the puck. He came in just by the blue line, inside the blue line at the tops of the circles, and he flicked it up, and he would tap it 3 or 4 times, and then bat it into the net. Boom, top shelf. And he did that 3 times.
Wow.
Like nowadays, oh, well, that's not a big deal. But for the 6-year-old Craig Eagles, that was pretty special. I'll never forget that.
For sure.
And so I've seen, I didn't see Bobby Orr play. I've seen some old footage of Bobby Orr play. And I think the game has a unique way of showing us so many different eras and so many great players throughout those eras. Being a hockey fan, watching the old legends of hockey that TSN put together way back, just tremendous stuff. Absolutely. Gives you goosebumps.
Yeah, I agree. And so yeah, we've had a great chat tonight. I've really enjoyed just talking hockey with you. It's been a lot of fun. And I just like to say thank you for coming on to the point. I really appreciate it. And where can people find you? Where can people keep up with what you're doing, what you're writing, and just different places they can find what you're writing and what you're doing?
Yeah. So I jumped on the First Downs Sports Podcast, so FDS Sports Podcast Network. You can find my articles there. Ray Dunn, Andy Jardine, and Jeannie Burke gave me the opportunity to join their platform. So you can find my articles there. You can follow me on Twitter at Eagles37 and the FDS podcast network as well. Hopefully, haven't called a game on Rogers just yet. I was scheduled, we went into the orange phase. I was scheduled to do a few games during that stretch, and then Chris Dobson and I share the color analyst duties for Wildcats games. So so you can watch on Rogers TV. Sports Inclusive, my little sports talk show, that's active. We've got something in the works as well. I can't say what that might be. The Quick Shift podcast, and Facebook. I put a few articles up on Facebook as well. So I try. I'm not an Instagram. I'm on there, but I'm not. It's a different platform. I'm not very good at Instagram. But.
Yeah, I hear you there. But no, everybody go check out Craig's Instagram, like you said, at Eeks37, because he does some really cool videos. They're called observations from the rink. And he told me that sometimes he doesn't like them, but I really enjoy them. So let's all go watch them. So he has to keep putting them out.
Well, thanks, Noah, for everything, and I really appreciate this. Some amazing questions, and continued success with this. To the point is good stuff, and I think it's great that you're talking hockey from multiple angles, and we need more of that. We definitely do.
Well, I appreciate it, Craig, and everybody who's going to be tuning in. Please enjoy the interview, and we'll talk soon. Have a good night.